The Asian Cup this year was super exciting, and one of the many reasons for that is because of the several beautiful underdog stories that occurred at the tournament. So, which Asian countries defied their expectations and left a lasting impression on this competition? Well, let's take a look. Let's start this off with Tajikistan, one of the best underdog stories at this tournament. Before heading into the Asian Cup, Tajikistan had to go through the qualifiers just like every other Asian country, but they got pretty unlucky with their draw since they got grouped with powerhouses Japan, who won 8 out of the 8 games and got the maximum amount of points. However, Tajikistan finished second, which is really impressive, but this second place meant that they missed an automatic spot to qualify for the Asian Cup. Regardless, they made the third round of qualifying for this tournament, and in this round is where Tajikistan made history, since this is where they would get 2 wins and 1 draw, getting 7 points total, and thanks to their higher goal difference, they finished on top of their group and qualified for their first international tournament ever, the 2023 Asian Cup. Yeah, this was literally Tajikistan's first ever professional tournament, making history by qualifying. But not only that, they made even more history at the competition. But I'm getting a little too ahead of myself, so let me slow down. Heading into the Asian Cup now, Tajikistan were 106th place in the FIFA rankings, which meant that they would be in pot 4 of the draw, which also meant that they would be at a severe disadvantage since they'll have better Asian countries rank-wise in their group. And I'm not gonna lie, before the Asian Cup draw, I've genuinely never heard about Tajikistan in my life. I'm literally not even kidding about that either. But now, I'll never forget them. Believe that. Anyways, Tajikistan ended up getting grouped with the host Qatar, who later became champions. I'll touch on that later though. China and Lebanon. Honestly, this group was pretty favorable for Tajikistan, since Lebanon aren't necessarily the strongest team, and China has kind of been on a downhill trend since the Chinese Super League fell apart. Honestly, China have always been kind of terrible, who am I kidding? Speaking of China though, that's who Tajikistan first played at the tournament. And not gonna lie, even though Tajikistan has some chances in the game, China were honestly the better team. In fact, not only did China have the better chances, but they even scored from a corner kick in the 81st minute in what looked like the winner. However, due to one of the Chinese players being in an offside position from the corner, the goal was taken back pretty controversially, and the game ended in a 0-0 draw. So as we can see, the early signs for Tajikistan weren't great, and this sort of bad luck continued on to the second game, because they had to play the host Qatar in the following match. Now like I've said, Qatar were the 2019 champions, and also became the most recent 2023 champions now too. And with them being the host, it was always going to be an uphill battle for Tajikistan. But to their credit, they held their ground, and they only lost 1-0 due to a goal by this tournament's MVP, Akram Afif, in the 17th minute. So now, with the signs looking a little more promising, Tajikistan used their previous 2 games as a wake-up call, and knew that they had to do whatever it takes to win their third game against Lebanon. Now Lebanon weren't looking too good either, with them losing 3-0 to Qatar in the opening match, and then drawing China 0-0. So if there ever was an opponent that Tajikistan could beat, it would be Lebanon. Then the game kicked off, and early on in the second half, the worst possible scenario happened for Tajikistan, and they conceded a great goal from Lebanon in the 47th minute. At this moment, it seemed like Lebanon were going to be the ones going through, and Tajikistan were heading out of the tournament. But Tajikistan took Nikkei 30's advice seriously and never gave up.
Never back down, never what?
Never give up!
That's right! Let's go!
That's because Tajikistan were given hope, since a Lebanese defender made a clumsy challenge in the 56th minute and got himself sent off, which meant that Tajikistan now had the main advantage. And this helped Tajikistan massively. In the 80th minute from a free kick position, Umarbayev hit it top bins and equalized for his country. But even then, a 1-1 draw wouldn't be enough for Tajikistan. They needed one more. Tajikistan knew this, and they continued their press for the second goal that they needed. And then eventually, in the 90+ second minute, Tajikistan got what they were looking for, and super sub Kamarkulov headed the ball from across into the back of the net to score a last-minute goal for his country. And this secured a massive 3 points in the 2-1 victory from behind. With this win, Tajikistan made even more history for their nation and qualified for the round of 16 at the Asian Cup by finishing second place in Group A with 4 points. But the story for Tajikistan doesn't end here. In the round of 16, Tajikistan were faced with the challenge of playing the United Arab Emirates, who also finished second in their group. Now the UAE weren't favorites to win the Asian Cup or anything, but they were definitely favorites to beat Tajikistan. If we just look at squad values alone, the UAE have a squad valued at around 32.55 million euros, while Tajikistan are only valued at 7.5 million euros. So safe to say, Tajikistan were massive underdogs heading into this game. But on the pitch, it felt like the opposite. Tajikistan were going toe-to-toe with the UAE, who were also practically the home team since their country is basically neighbors with Qatar. And in the 30th minute, Haranov from Tajikistan dunks on 2 UAE defenders and scores a header to give Tajikistan a surprising lead. And this lead felt like it was going to last the entire match, with Tajikistan defending vigorously all throughout the game. However, the United Arab Emirates broke Tajikistan hearts at the end of normal time, because in the 90+5th minute, 2 minutes before the final whistle, Al-Hamadi headed the ball from a free kick into the back of the net to equalize for the Middle Eastern country. At this moment, I thought it was over for Tajikistan, and the game was destined for the UAE to win, but I thought wrong, and Tajikistan kept the game 1-1 all throughout extra time, and the match was sent into penalties, which is basically like a 50-50. And in the second penalty for the UAE, taken by Caio Canedo, the Tajikistan goalkeeper Rustam Yatimov makes an incredible save to give the advantage for Tajikistan. And then after the fifth penalty for them was calmly slotted in, Tajikistan made even more history at the tournament and upset the UAE to make it to the quarterfinals of the Asian Cup. Incredible, bruh. In Tajikistan's debut at a professional tournament, they made it all the way to the quarterfinals of the competition. So shout out to Tajikistan, man. They're doing something that my country, India, could never do. India, bro, wake up. How do we suck so bad? Going back to Tajikistan though, sadly for them, their dream run ended in the quarterfinals after losing 1-0 to Jordan. But I don't want to touch on this game right now because obviously later in the video, spoiler alert, I'm definitely going to be talking about Jordan. So I'll go more into detail about this game later. What you need to know for now though is regardless of Tajikistan's run ending in the quarters, they've made their entire nation and people proud and put their country on the map in terms of potential Asian countries on the rise in football. I can't wait to see what more Tajikistan has to offer in football. And who knows, maybe they can qualify for the 2026 World Cup in the States. Next up, we got Palestine. But real quick before we get on with that though, please remember to subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it and it means a lot, so thank you. And also if you guys can, follow my Twitter and Instagram, both at Nabuto, if you just want to hear my thoughts on football games, transfers, and overall just to get to know me more. So if you want to, feel free to hit me up with that follow. Thank you. Back to topic, the Palestinian national team got a bit unlucky with their qualifying group, with them having one of the Asian Cup favorites, Saudi Arabia, and even the solid Uzbekistan in their group, in which both finished above Palestine. Regardless, with Palestine getting 10 points, they managed to make the third round of qualifying for the Asian Cup, and in this round, Palestine would absolutely sweep past the likes of the Philippines, Mongolia, and Yemen to top the group with 9 points and qualify for the Asian Cup for only their third time ever. However, heading into the Asian Cup is when things get really dark for Palestine as a whole. In October 2023, the ravaging conflict between Hamas and the IDF escalated extremely, and the cost of that, as of me recording this video, is the death of around 28,000 Palestinians and around 68,000 injured. Remember, half of Gaza's population is children, and their innocent lives are sadly involved in this death toll. Now, I'm not a qualified journalist or a politician or anyone really qualified to speak on this situation in a detailed manner. I'm just a football YouTuber and I want to stay that way. So if you want to learn more about this depressing situation / genocide, feel free to do your own research. However, it's almost impossible to ignore the travesties of what's happening to the Palestinian people when I'm talking about their national team, since they're super intertwined. For example, Palestine's midfielder Odek Garoub was draped in a Palestinian flag after one of the games and pointed to the 110 number drawn on his arm, referencing the number of days at the time since the Israeli government began its assault on Gaza after the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Palestine defender Mohamed Salah, and I know what y'all are thinking, no, I'm not talking about Egypt's Mo Salah. This is a different one. Anyway, Saleh, who is from Gaza, has actually lost family members during this conflict, and midfielder Mohamed Rashid has no contact with his family back home in Gaza and hadn't heard any updates about them since there's no telecoms, Wi-Fi, etc. So as I've already presented, the Palestinian national team and the conflicts going on right now are deeply connected. But back to the football, Palestine were actually put in a pretty difficult group, containing the likes of Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, and Iran. The draw was not kind to Palestine, but the Palestinians were up for the challenge. Just not initially though, because against one of the favorites at the tournament, Iran, Palestine low-key got destroyed. Despite late into the first half, where in the 45th + 6th minute, the Merseyam scored a header from a free kick to get a goal back for Palestine, making it Palestine's second ever goal at the Asian Cup. Palestine were sadly crushed 4-1 by the Asian powerhouses. But in the game, the Palestinian players saw all the support they were seeing. From the beginning of the game, where there was a moment of silence, to thousands of fans coming to the game to support Palestine and chanting Free Palestine, it's clear that they were receiving a ton of support. The national team players saw this and made sure that they would pay the people supporting them, and that's exactly what they did. In their second game against the United Arab Emirates, it didn't start off well, with them constantly being attacked by the UAE, and then in the 23rd minute, Adil on the UAE gets the breakthrough and gives his country the lead with a header. However, the lead felt like it wouldn't last that long, because Palestine switched into second gear, and in the 33rd minute, they were awarded a penalty, and the UAE defender got sent off. Sadly though, the striker who scored in the previous game, the Merseyam, stepped up to the plate and had his penalty saved, failing to equalize from such a golden chance. But even with this miss, the Palestinian national team never gave up hope, and Sayyam himself crossed the ball in the 50th minute, and Nasser on the UAE owned goals accidentally to give Palestine another goal in the tournament. Palestine continued to pile on the pressure and chances, but in the end, it ended in a 1-1 draw, and Palestine would take that all day. This result gave them hope that they can miraculously make it through if they achieve a good result against Hong Kong, which is precisely what they did. Palestine were dominating Hong Kong from the jump, and in the 12th minute, the Bog, who's a Palestinian forward that plays in the Belgian league for Charleroi, scores a header to give Palestine the lead. Damn, I just realized I'm mentioning a lot of header goals in this video, and I don't think that's gonna change. But I digress. In the 48th 60th minute now, Kumbar gets on the end of a cross and scores another one for Palestine with, you guessed it, his head. Palestine now have a 2-0 lead unexpectedly. But this wasn't the end of the game yet, because in the 60th minute, the first goal scorer for Palestine in the game, the Bug, scores off a rebound and gives Palestine a 3-0 lead, something that they would hold on to until the final whistle. The Palestinian players rejoice, because not only did they get their first ever win at the Asian Cup, but they also progressed through to the knockout stages for the first time as well, with them being one of the best third place teams in the tournament. What a historic feat for Palestine. However, their journey in the knockout stage was short-lived, because they had to play against the host Qatar, and despite Palestine getting a good amount of opportunities, including the Bug scoring a goal in the 37th minute to actually give Palestine a 1-0 lead in the game, Qatar came back thanks to an Al-Haidal's goal from a well-routine corner kick and an Akram Afif penalty kick. So with this, Palestine lost 2-1, and they were sent out of the Asian Cup. However, at a time of struggle for many Palestinians, this national team gave their people and nation hope and something to smile about during this dark period of their history, and that's what makes this underdog story so beautiful. Next up with the great underdog story, we got Bahrain. I feel like Bahrain is a country that's kind of slept on, and not just in the football sense. Like when you think of visiting the Middle East, you usually think of the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Lebanon, Jordan, even Kuwait before you think of Bahrain, which sucks because although I've never visited Bahrain, it would be pretty cool to. Back to topic, in terms of football, Bahrain is definitely one of the weaker nations in the Middle East, despite finishing 4th in the 2004 Asian Cup. That's because heading into the 2023 Asian Cup, they were 86th place in the FIFA rankings, which isn't high up there whatsoever. And the Asian Cup qualifiers too, they were extremely unlucky to be drawn in a group with Iran and Iraq, who both automatically qualified to the Asian Cup, while Bahrain had to go to the third round of qualifying. In this round though, Bahrain easily swept past a group that contained Malaysia, Turkmenistan, and Bangladesh, and topped the group to qualify for the Asian Cup for the 6th time. Now in Bahrain's first match of the Asian Cup, they had to play one of the heavy favorites of the competition, South Korea. That's actually so unlucky, man, to have to face South Korea as their first opponent. They literally have the best player in the competition on their team, Heung-min. Regardless, Bahrain did give a pretty good battle to the South Koreans. Despite conceding first in the 38th minute to Hwang In-byum, Bahrain bounced back in the 51st minute thanks to a good goal by Al-Hashash to draw things level. But Bahrain couldn't hold on to the draw, because 5 minutes later in the 56th minute, Lee Kang-in, one of South Korea's superstars, bigs in a rocket with his left foot to give South Korea the advantage again. And then around 12 minutes later in the 68th minute, Lee Kang-in pounces once again and scores his second to secure all 3 points for South Korea as they go on to beat Bahrain 3-1. Starting off with a loss isn't something any team wants, but when you realize it was against South Korea, it's kind of hard to judge Bahrain too much. Plus, they still have a very good chance of making it through at this point, and they didn't let this chance slip. That's because in the next game, they had to play Malaysia, someone who was actually in their Asian Cup third qualifying round group, if you don't recall. And in that game, Bahrain beat Malaysia 2-1 from behind. So we all knew that this game was bound to be a close affair, and it was, because it remained 0-0 for almost the entirety of the match. But the deadlock was broken in the 90+5th minute in injury time, literally the very last minute, thanks to Madan, who got the winner and a crucial 3 points for Bahrain. Heartbreak for Malaysia, but the game's the game. Heading into the final game, Bahrain had to play Jordan, someone who also had a very good Asian Cup, but I don't want to talk about them yet because like I said earlier, I'll talk about them later. But regardless, Bahrain actually ended up victorious in this crucial game, thanks to a well-orchestrated counterattack from the Middle Eastern nation. Now I know what you might be thinking. Bahrain might be going through as a second place team in the group, because South Korea obviously is going to get first. But that's wrong, because instead, Bahrain miraculously topped the group while South Korea finished second. How? Well, shout out to Malaysia, because despite losing to Bahrain in their last 2 meetings, they came in clutch for Bahrain, and Super Sub Morales scored a great goal in the 90+15th minute to secure a 3-3 draw, forcing South Korea to drop points and finishing in second. So with this, the 86th ranked country in the world ended up topping Group B at the Asian Cup, and obtained an easier matchup in the round 16. Or that's what you would think, because Japan fumbled the bag and finished second in their group, meaning that Bahrain had to play the actual Asian Cup favorites in the round 16, and they ended up losing to them 3-1, as expected, ending their Asian Cup. But despite this, Bahrain are clearly making progress in terms of football, and maybe for future Asian Cups, they can slowly become a sleeper pick to make it even farther and potentially win it. Maybe like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, you never know. Next on this list, I actually want to give a couple of honorable mentions to Iraq and Iran. To start off with Iraq, for me, they didn't quite fit the criteria of having a whole underdog story. The reason being is that they were one of the favorites to go through from the group, and also that they were the previous champions in 2007, while every country that I mentioned so far in this video haven't won a single Asian Cup. However, Iraq did have an underdog moment at this Asian Cup, and that's what I want to highlight, with them surprisingly beating Japan 2-1, the heavy favorites to win the Asian Cup, and that's something Iraqi football fans are going to remember forever. But besides this particular particular moment, Iraq did everything that was expected of them by making it through to the knockout stages, surprisingly being first in it, but making it through nevertheless. But in the round 16, when they were the heavy favorites to beat Jordan, they lost 3-2. Yeah, it was kind of controversial, trust me, I'll get to that. But all in all, I wouldn't say Iraq had a great underdog story in this tournament, but instead a great underdog moment, which is why they aren't necessarily on this list, but they definitely deserve a shout out. Now let's move on to Iran. Iran are automatically excluded from being an underdog story because, well, they aren't underdogs. In fact, they were like in the top 3 favorite countries to win this competition. But with everything going on with Iran inside the country and how it affected the players, the fact that they were able to clean sweep their group and get all 9 points, to then beating Syria on penalties in the round 16, and then coming from behind to beat favorites Japan 2-1 thanks to a 90+ 6-minute penalty from Jahanbakhsh, is something I know Iranian fans will cherish forever too. All in all though, Iran aren't underdogs, but the underdog moment of beating Japan is something that I wanted to highlight. Alright, that's enough of my honorable mentions. Let's now go to the biggest underdog story at the tournament. For me and many others, Jordan had the most beautiful underdog story at the 2023 Asian Cup. Before the Asian Cup started, Jordan were 87th place, which is one behind Bahrain, a country that I literally just mentioned. Not only that, in terms of everybody that I mentioned except Palestine, Jordan statistically did the worst in the qualifying rounds. Not by points though, but the fact that they finished 3rd in their group, falling behind Kuwait as well, a country that didn't even make the Asian Cup. However, Jordan bounced back in the 3rd round of qualifying, with them clean sweeping their group that actually contained Kuwait in it, and qualified themselves for their 5th Asian Cup. That was a while ago though, but right before the Asian Cup, Jordan's national team was in complete disarray. In fact, in their most recent 9 games before the 2023 Asian Cup, Jordan lost 7 of those games. This includes the likes of losing to Norway 6-0, Azerbaijan 2-1, Lebanon 2-1, and Japan right before the tournament 6-1. So safe to say,
big man thing, yeah? It's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good.
But heading into the Asian Cup, it was a great time for Jordan to start off on a clean slate. And that's exactly what they did. Because in the first game, Jordan had to play Malaysia, and they absolutely ran them out of the park. At the start in the 12th minute, Almardi scored an absolute golazo to give Jordan the lead. Then, 6 minutes later in the 18th minute, the ace Altamari converted a penalty to give Jordan a 2-0 lead. Moving on to the 32nd minute, Almardi once again gets on the end of a cross in front of the goal to give Jordan a 3-goal lead. And Jordan still wasn't finished.
I'm not finished.
Because in the 85th minute, the scorer of the penalty, Altamari, puts the cherry on top and scores a beautiful chip goal from outside the box to give Jordan a 4-0 win to start their Asian Cup. Honestly, what a great way to start your Asian Cup campaign. And in hindsight, this 4-0 win was critical for Jordan's success at the tournament. However, the remaining group stage games were bound to be much tougher for Jordan, especially the second game against South Korea, one of the favorites to win it all, like I previously mentioned. In the game, it didn't start off well for Jordan either, because in the 4th minute, Jordan gave up a penalty, and in the 9th minute, Heung-min converted it to give the South Koreans a 1-0 lead. This is probably the worst start that you could think of for Jordan to have against South Korea. But Jordan continued to pile on the pressure and ask the questions, and in the 37th minute, they finally broke down the South Korean defense from a corner kick, with Park Young-woo having no choice but to try and clear the ball, but accidentally hitting it into the back of his own net. Jordan would then have one more chance before halftime, where they would make it count in the 45th plus 6th minute, where Al-Nemat scores an outrageous volley from outside the box to give Jordan a 2-1 lead heading into the half. Not gonna lie, one thing that I noticed at this Asian Cup is that Jordan loves scoring screamers. Now in the second half, Jordan actually kept it 2-1 to them for almost the entire game. In the 90+ 1st minute, however, their defense couldn't manage to hang on, and an own goal from Al Arab gave South Korea the equalizer, and the game ended in a 2-2 draw. A tough drop of points for Jordan. But if you asked them before the match whether they would take a draw or not, Jordan fans would 100% say yes they would. Then swiftly moving on to the last group stage game against Bahrain, I already mentioned this, but Jordan surprisingly lost to Bahrain 1-0, and this ended up costing them, since they finished 3rd place in the group. However, thanks to them getting 4 points and a +3 goal difference, Jordan ended up being the best 3rd place team at the Asian Cup, and this got them through to the round 16, where they would be faced with Iraq, a country that football fans felt like they could go all the way and win their 2nd Asian Cup. Sadly for them though, Jordan was too much of an obstacle. From minute 1, Jordan were on the attack, and it finally paid off in the dying moments of the first half, where Al-Nemat sprints past the 2 Iraqi defenders and chips it over the goalkeeper to give Jordan a 1-0 lead heading into halftime. But at the start of the second half, the game flipped on its head, and Iraq this time were the ones piling on the pressure, and it paid off in the 68th minute, thanks to Natik scoring from a corner to equalize for the favorites of the game, Iraq. And 8 minutes later, Iraq would double their lead, thanks to striker Hussein, the same goal scorer who bagged a brace against Japan, would score against Jordan in stunning fashion in the 76th minute to give Iraq a 2-1 lead, something that they definitely deserved in the second half. And honestly, after this goal, it felt like Iraq had this victory secured in the bag. But this is where the game gets a little complicated and controversial, and Jordan pounces on this opportunity. Basically, what happened was Hussein celebrated more than one time. I'm pretty sure he had like 3 different celebrations, and in the last one, he was copying Jordan Jordan's celebration, and because of this, he got a second yellow from the referee and got sent off. So all in all, Hussein might have sold the game for Iraq, because from here on, the game completely flipped on its head again, and Jordan were constantly on the attack against this 10-man Iraqi side. The pressure would finally pay off for Jordan in the dying moments too, with Al-Arab getting on the rebound from the goalkeeper and equalizing dramatically for Jordan. But right when you thought it was going to extra time, Jordan got one last opportunity and they made it count. In the 90+7th minute, Al-Rashdan got the ball outside the box and scored a rocket to give Jordan a very late lead. And this was something that they would hold on to, meaning that Jordan surprisingly beat Iraq in the round 16 3-2. Yes, this win was controversial, and Jordan might have been lucky to go through, but listen, the game's the game. But just because Jordan had made history after finally getting their first ever knockout stage win at the Asian Cup, there was still some drama off the pitch for the national team, because in the 3-2 win, Jordan's top scorer, Hamza Al-Dardur, got in an argument with Al-Muta, the Jordan coach, and his staff, and after him pushing the fitness coach, he was sent home from the Asian Cup. So much drama, man. Keemstar would be feasting right now.
I'm your host,
But all this drama wouldn't stop Jordan in their quest to make even more history at this tournament, and that's what they did, because in the quarterfinals, Jordan had to play another underdog that I mentioned earlier, Tajikistan, for a spot in the semifinals. And not gonna lie, Jordan were all over this game. They were dominating Tajikistan and had the better and larger amount of chances. Eventually, this non-stop attack from Jordan would pay off in the 66th minute from a corner, where the ball would bounce off Tajikistan defender Hananov and go into his own net. And this singular goal is something Jordan would hold on to until the final whistle, where Jordan would win 1-0, breaking Tajikistan hearts, but making history for their own by reaching the semifinals of the Asian Cup for the first time in their history. Heading into the semifinals though, the odds were stacked against Jordan once again, as expected. But this time, Jordan were gonna miss their defender, Salem Al-Ajalin, and forward Ali Alwan through suspension. Regardless, Jordan was gonna give it all against their opponents in the semifinal, South Korea, the country that was literally in their group where they originally drew 2-2. Jordan had experience against this Asian powerhouse, and this seemed to prove pivotal in hindsight. From the very start, Jordan was piling on the pressure, something that they've done in every game throughout the entire tournament. In fact, in total, Jordan only managed to have 30% possession, but they managed to get 7 shots on target, which just shows how much pressing and attacking they were doing without much of the ball. Throughout the first half, Jordan kept the superstars Heung-min Son, Hwang Yi-chan, and Kang-in Lee quiet, and Jordan seemed to be the ones with the better chances. Then, this pressure would pay off early in the second half, because in the 53rd minute, Al-Neymar gets the breakthrough for Jordan after a beautiful chip over South Korea's goalkeeper, who was having himself a wonderful game to be fair. But now, Jordan have got a surprising lead, and they would double it in the 66th minute thanks to Al-Tamari, who scores a great left-footed shot from outside the box to give Jordan a very surprising 2-0 lead. And this lead would be kept throughout the entire match, and Jordan would somehow beat the favorites left in the competition, South Korea, 2-0 to progress to their first Asian Cup final in their history. Regardless of anything, Jordan made their nation proud and defied all expectations. Like bruh, Jordan had a total squad value of 14 million euros, and only one of their players, Al-Tamari, plays in Europe, with him playing for Montpellier and actually became the first Jordan player to score in League 1 this season. But like I said, Jordan were history makers, but they still had one match to go, and it was the final against Qatar. But not gonna lie, before the match, it was kinda looking good for Jordan. Despite Qatar winning the last Asian Cup in 2019 and being the host of this one, Jordan had experience in beating Qatar. You guys remember how I said in Jordan's last 9 games before the Asian Cup, they lost 7 times? Well, the 2 times they didn't was due to a 1-1 draw to Tajikistan, a team that they beat in the quarterfinals, and a 2-1 victory over Qatar, the same team that they're facing in the final. So Jordan did have some recent experience in beating Qatar, which is why they and their fans were very confident heading into the match. Plus, since 1996, every team that beat Iraq has made the Asian Cup final, and since 2007, every team that beat South Korea has won the Asian Cup. The stats were in Jordan's favor, but sadly, Qatar was just too much for them. Despite Al-Neymar scoring an incredibly well-taken goal in the 67th minute, Akram Afif got a hat-trick of penalties to secure a 3-1 victory for Qatar to win their second Asia Cup in a row, breaking Jordanian hearts. Now listen, despite Jordan being so close to achieving monumental success, they still made their nation and their people proud, and this is something no Jordanian is ever gonna forget. And who knows, maybe Jordan can take this good run of form into World Cup qualifying and potentially make it to the 2026 World Cup held in the United States, or maybe in the Asian Cup in Saudi Arabia in 2027, Jordan can go all the way and win it this time. Honestly though, that probably won't happen, but shit, you never know. Anyways, did you guys enjoy the Asian Cup this year? And what are your thoughts about the underdog stories at this tournament? Let me know down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe, I would really appreciate it. And please be sure to follow my Twitter and my Instagram, the links are in my YouTube description. And last but not least, if you want to learn more about how India miserably failed at the Asian Cup and how they can improve, you should definitely check out this video right here, you won't regret it.